Empire.
Heel back to Hachimura. Konnichiwa.
First off, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
It was more just shocking to hear from him and understanding that he gets the most assists from me and the most spoon-fed baskets ever.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
To sit up there and to say you don't have a culture problem in the nation's capital, everything about the organization points to a culture issue.
One guy took a in another guy's shoe.
I'm a little pissed off about it, but I know how I am. I was kind of expecting it. It's disrespectful.
It was like Eric Killmonger going for total domination. What's up is mine.
We're not going to be fucking sunk this year. We're the Stanley Cup champions! Yeah!
This podcast is all over social media, so follow us on Twitter at BeltwayBroPod, Instagram at Beltway_sports_bros_podcast. Also the Facebook group, just search Beltway Sports Bros Podcast. And you can also find us at BeltwaySportsBros.com. There's a podcast player right on the front page. If someone you know doesn't want to or know how to download a podcast app or even knows what a podcast is, just tell them to go to the website and hit play. Simple as that. Thank you for joining us today. We are the Beltway Sports Bros. I'm Matt Vazana, and as always, my brother Noel. Sorry, we didn't have other shows this week, but we took a little hiatus due to the bye week and election day and all that kind of stuff, you know. Didn't think anybody would actually listen to us, so, you know, got a little R&R.
Right. You know, hey, man, the NFL gets days off. Why can't we?
No days off, but fuck it, we are. So, sorry, guys. And I wanted to watch Super Tuesday, which I thought was going to end on Tuesday, but...
Yeah, right.
Please. It's freaking telethon over here.
I know, man. Jerry's kids.
Yeah, right. Something we wanted to mention is that we're going to be cutting this show down to 2 days a week. Noel and I have made an executive decision on that. Starting next week, we'll be on Tuesdays and Fridays instead of Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. One thing you can be happy about, though, is that we're going to try to make the show a little bit longer to kind of compensate for that. But thought you guys would like to know, so there you go.
Could be good and bad.
Yeah.
Like, geez, can barely deal with these guys for 30 minutes, let alone whatever the hell they're going to do.
3-hour shows. That's what we're doing.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be like the election.
Yeah. We'll never end. But really appreciate the support, as always. But 3 days a week is going to put us in an early grave. So we're doing 2. So hopefully you guys like it. Anyway, later on in the show, we're going to have the Athletics' Ben Standig to talk all things Washington football. But first, let's start with a preview of the Week 9 NFC East matchup with the New York Giants at the Washington football team. Coming off their bye, your 2-5 Washington will go up against the 1-7 Giants at FedEx Field. The Giants played the Bucs last week on Monday Night Football, lost a heartbreaker, and Washington annihilated the Cowboys prior to their bye week. So this week's game will be on Fox at 1 p.m., and Washington is actually favored by 2.5 this week, Noel. What do you think about that? This is the first time this year, I think, right? Has to be.
Yeah, I mean, this would be the only game that they would be favored, if any at all.
It's not even close. I mean, yeah, they've not been favored.
No.
Not even.
No reason.
No reason. But were they favored against the Cowboys? I think they were, actually. Regardless, they're supposed to lose all their games. So this is exciting for us. Anyway, last time these two teams played was October 18th. Pretty recent, and Washington lost on that horrendous 2-point conversion attempt, as you all remember. So let's go over the updated injury report as of Thursday for Washington. Tackle Jerron Christian and wide receiver Dontrell Inman did not practice. Doesn't look good that they're going to play this week. Some good news, though. Slot receiver Steven Sims Jr. was taken off of IR and has been practicing, but we're not really sure if he's going to play this week, next week, whenever, but I think they have like 25 days or something to make a decision. And then Montez Sweat was a full go after suffering a concussion against Dallas, so looks like he's good to go. As for the Giants, cornerback Ryan Lewis didn't practice all week. He looks to be out. Also something to watch, running back Devontae Freeman has been out a couple of weeks, has been fighting an ankle injury, apparently has a chance to play this week, so we shall see. All right, so let's start with the Washington offense versus the Giants defense. Go ahead, Noel. Do your thing.
All right, first off, huge game. Can go 3-1 in the division. Same thing that we said against Giants the first time, against Dallas. Can kind of write their own ticket in the division if they continue to win these. If these are the only games that Washington wins, that's really in this shitty division all that matters. So I think that this is an enormous game for them. And I think primarily what needs to happen is what killed him in the first game is Kyle Allen mistakes, right? The fumble, the interception, he fought back from it, which was great. Like we said, with the 2-point conversion bullshit. But if he can limit his mistakes, I think that he was really still getting his bearings in the Giants game. He's looked a lot better since, especially in the Dallas game, which anybody can find an identity against them. But I think he looked good in that game as well. So that's going to be one of the primary issues that they have to make sure that does not happen is don't shoot yourself in the foot and keep away from the turnovers, because I think they're a better team than the Giants are.
Yeah. Washington, last time they played him, it was only a couple weeks ago, beat the Giants in really every meaningful statistical category. Yeah. They should have won pretty easily if you just looked at the stats. Just look at the time of possession. They beat him 33.5 to 26.5. Total yards, 337 to 240. First downs, they had 24. Total plays. I mean, you should never lose when you have 69 to 46 total plays. It's absurd.
Well, in their defense, I mean, one of the Giants' possessions was a return on a fumble.
No,
so they
absolutely.
Didn't get an
but I'm saying,
no, I get what you're saying though.
They dominated on first downs. The time of possession was there. Yeah, of course that's going to skew everything, right? When you have a fumble for a touchdown, but they still were doing what they needed to do.
Absolutely.
And it was Kyle Allen. Of course, he came back and made that great throw, but the damage was already done because Rivera had no intention of winning that game.
Washington did everything in their power on the offensive side to allow the Giants to be in that game. And the Giants' defense, especially in the front line, is a decent front. And we talked about this the first time we said this game. This game is going to be won on the front seven, right? You're going to have to try to establish a running game. Washington had, 22 attempts, I think, for 70 yards in the first game. There was a somewhat valid attempt made, but I think they really have to pound the rock. Take what they did against Dallas. They're not going to have the same success that they did, I don't believe. But you have to establish some type of identity in the game and say, this is what we're going to do. We are going to beat you in this category in this particular game. And if it doesn't work, then you move on. But don't just bail on it with some bullshit attempt on the first, second drive and then say, oh, well, sorry, Gibson, you can take a seat.
Well, I respectfully disagree, Noel, because I always say the same thing, run the ball, throw deep, right? This time I'm saying something completely different. I think nobody can run on the Giants' defense. They're averaging 3.7 yards a carry. They're fourth in the league, giving up 102 a game, right?
Right.
This is not Washington's. I mean, yeah, whatever Antonio Gibson did last week means nothing in this game.
No, it's not their forte. I'll acknowledge that.
So Kyle Allen should be more comfortable. As you mentioned, he was getting his feet wet. This is going to be on him because, yeah, they still need to establish some kind of a run, but they would have won that game if he didn't have the fumble. And that's all he really needs to do. We just need a repeat of last time. Just don't fuck up. And you should be okay.
I agree.
They're susceptible to the pass. They can rush the passer pretty well. The Giants can. I think they got like 20 sacks in the season. They're up there.
No, their D-backs are garbage. There's no doubt about it. If you can contain their front seven, then you can do some damage down the field. There's no doubt about it. What I'm saying is that their front seven also can get to the quarterback almost just as well as Washington can. Yeah. So if you're going to sit here and start flinging the ball around with Kyle Allen, you will see some turnovers, whether it be him seeing him fumble the ball or interceptions again. I'm not saying it's going to be successful, but what I'm saying is just to keep them on their toes. That's all I'm getting at. I'm not thinking that Gibson is going to go out and run for another 100 yards. I'm not having delusions of grandeur here. I'm just saying this team can pressure the quarterback, and Kyle Allen has shown in plenty of games, whether it be with Carolina or with Washington, that he cannot handle pressure. He just can't.
Yeah.
He can move out of it sometimes, and he can make a good play out of it. But if it's consistent pressure on him, he has major issues.
And that's what I'm saying. I just think they need to do what they did last time. They ran the ball. They ran enough to keep them honest. I'm not saying to go back there and throw 60 times a game. That's not at all what I'm saying, because Kyle Allen can't do that. He doesn't have that. He's not Aaron Rodgers. So he does need the run game to assist him, but I don't think that they need to pound it into a brick wall over and over again, because I wouldn't say Washington has an advantage over anybody when it comes to throwing the ball, but at least the Giants' defense is susceptible to the pass. So you got to take advantage of that and not beat your head against the wall unnecessarily just to say you ran the ball. This time, Norv Jr., do what you got to do.
Right.
So,
lastly, on the offense, an interesting matchup is McLaurin-Bradbury. That was a good matchup last time. I think McLaurin had 7 catches for 70 yards or something like that, and that was a lot of it was at the tail end. He needs to be consistently involved in the game, and they need to move him around because Bradbury's going to be shadowing him, and really he's obviously their best offensive weapon. Logan Thomas has to be more involved. I think they're better when he's involved in the game. I feel like the offense is definitely more consistent when he's involved. They have to continue that course. And then Gibson out of the backfield on passes and things like that, or McKissick, or whoever it is. Just get it to those guys that you're usually, because right now we don't know where Sims is at.
Be nice to have him back, though.
It would be nice to have him back, but even if he is, I just don't see him being on the field a ton, and they're not going to start throwing him freaking screens with 3 guys barreling down on him and shit when the guy has barely played. I just don't see that happening. So you've got the usual 3 that are going to be the consistent offensive weapons, and you've got to use them and find their vulnerabilities in that shitty defensive backfield.
Well, the real Sims showed up last time. Maybe he'll be the hero again this game.
Oh yeah, my boy, man. Yeah. Hey, he's found his place. He's found a little place. I mean, he's a receiver with size. They don't have a ton of those, man. They really don't. And shit, are you kidding me? Why can't he play? Why not?
Well, I mean, he's going to have to because...
Yeah, well, they do everything. It seems like Washington does everything in their power to not have him play. They're like, hey, Matt. You look like you can still run a little bit. Okay, I'm sorry,
speed.
buddy. Back to the practice squad.
Well, Dontrell Inman's out probably. It's, I mean, and if Sims is out...
It's poor Cam. Last man on the totem pole just by proxy, you know?
All right, let's move on to the Washington defense versus the New York offense. So I'll start with this one. To win this game, the Washington defense needs to do what they did last time. If they just had an exact replica of the last game, I'd be totally fine with that. They held the Giants to 240 yards. Daniel Jones threw for 108 yards. Alex Smith-esque. Rush the shit out of Jones, make him make mistakes. Do not let the run game going this time, because in the fourth quarter, they started running a little bit. The Giants did. And outside of just the fumble recovery for a touchdown, you could see by like halfway through the third to the fourth that the Washington defense was getting tired. And they had no excuse to get tired. No. They weren't on the field much. We always use that excuse, they're exhausted in the third and fourth quarter. They had no reason to be, and they should not have given up. They gave up 132 yards in the last game. That's inexcusable, So that's one thing. But even so, Washington should have won that game pretty easily with everything that we're talking about. So if the defense just did what they did last time, I mean, maybe another sack or two, because I think they only sacked Daniel Jones like twice last time. Yeah,
Once.
so...
They hurried him sometimes. I mean, he scampered a few times and got away. He's a tough bring down. I mean, he can get away every once in a while and definitely get out of trouble. There's no doubt about it. And he's got wheels. So
should have had an 80-yard touchdown or 90 yards or whatever in that one game. And then he tripped over the field monster.
But, yeah, I mean, I think they played a very good game. But you're right. They have to stop the rush a little bit. They didn't get to Daniel Jones as much as they should because they dinked and dunked. I mean, let's be real. And they were throwing little short shit. But still, you have to get to him. And if he's going to do that short shit, you have to get him in the front. Payne and the Allens of the world have to pressure the middle of the pocket. And I think at some points they were really worried about him running the ball, and I think they were apprehensive about putting too much pressure on him. But I say this time, the way he's been shaking in his boots back there lately, get him on his ass, because I really believe what concerning me about this is I think they found things in the Tampa game. They have speed on that offense.
Yeah.
They've got Slayton.
He just came back on the last game, right?
He just came back on the last game,
addition.
and he was an immense difference in the game.
Yeah.
Okay, immense. They've got Shepard, who just came back again. Ingram is a beast, the tight end. They've got weapons on that offense. And I think that this team, if you allow Daniel Jones, and just like other quarterbacks, of course, if you allow him to get comfortable and they speed up their offense like they did against Tampa and they get into tempo, they can do some damage. There's no doubt about it. They have some fast receivers. And yes, on paper, we're yards against the pass, we're good and all that. To me, that's a little bit fool's gold, everyone. Okay, it's the front that is creating that. At the end of the day, we're still starting Everett at a safety position. We have Curl at the freaking other safety. It's not like we're gangbusters on D-backs.
Yeah.
So we're going to have problems with receivers with speed and a quality tight end if we're not putting Jones on his ass.
But Everett has been a huge upgrade over Apke. Just those 2 games.
Absolutely. No, I agree. No doubt.
But, I mean, I guess my mother-in-law would probably be an upgrade over
Right. I mean, shit, race to the bottom, man.
No, but he has been good. And Cameron Curl does concern me, as I said in my single show the other day, or whatever you want to call that.
Quality show, by the way, man. Quality
thanks,
show.
Noel.
Good
Appreciate
takes.
Thanks on the takes. No, but I mean, the Eric Reeds thing still pisses me off. But we'll talk to old Ben Standig about that one. But yeah, watching that Bucks game was a little worrisome to me. I'm not gonna lie. They showed up at that game and they showed that they're not a shitty team. And I think the Bucks are probably top 3 teams in the league right now, and they gave it to them. They should have won that game.
No, and their defensive front is no slouch.
Absolutely
We're not talking about it. Everybody thinks Brady and that crew on the other side of the ball, and Evans and that crew on the offensive side of the ball. That defense is good, especially the front 7. And they were giving Daniel Jones protection at times, enough to make plays. Like I said, they've got a ton of speed. They were slashing guys around. They had Tampa on their toes. Now, sun shines on a dog's ass some days, just like it may have when Washington beat the shit out of a shitty Dallas team.
Right.
So we'll see. At the end of the day, this is 2 below-average football teams, maybe even below average, that are going to be battling it out. But at the end of the day, Washington has a shitload to play for, miraculously enough.
They do.
And they've got to come out like they're playing for something to play for. And that's the bottom line of this whole thing. The Giants are not a good football team. If they lose to the Giants and get swept by the Giants this year, they can pack it in.
Wouldn't surprise me, though.
No, absolutely not. But let's get out of this facade of this playoff bullshit because we're in a shitty division. If you lose to the Giants, who are one of the worst football teams in the league, twice, and you're 2-2 in a division that is in complete and utter disarray. The only team that may show some remnants of life is the Eagles. You've got serious problems, and we need to stop this shit about there's still a mathematical chance. I'm so sick of mathematical chances with Washington. How many times have you and I, Matt, sat down like in week 14? We're like, well, if this team loses to that team and
like
Washington
John
wins
King.
the last 3, we're like start doing analytics and shit like Moneyball.
Yeah.
About how Washington can still mathematically make it, and they've got like a 0.8% chance of making it, but there's still a chance.
Yeah. It's sad when we get to that point, but hey, I just hope they have something to play for in late November. That would be nice, and this game would go a long way to do that.
No, yeah.
It'd be massive if they won this game, and leads us to our predictions, I think. You want to get to those?
Let's do it.
All right. You want to go first?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
I'm worried about the game. I am. But I think that they found a routine after that Dallas game. I think buys are overrated as far as preparation for games, especially when it comes to Washington. I'm hoping that it helped. They're playing a team that really doesn't have anything to play for in a shitty division, that is playing more so for pride. Washington is actually playing for something, and they need, like I said, they need to show that. And I think they are. But I still think it's going to be close. I think Washington's going to win 27-20.
All right. So you mentioned this before about the bye. Washington's going to be the fresher team. You're right. I don't think that preparation has a lot to do with it, but these teams know each other. They played each other 3 weeks ago. How much,
right.
You got plenty of film on each other. In reality, that's not any kind of an advantage for Washington. So the Giants know what they're working with. And the Giants honestly kind of got Washingtoned here, if you will. They got screwed having to play a team coming off a bye, and they had to play on Monday Night Football. That extra day could pay off for them as well. I think this year, amazingly, and I think, has to do with the coaching, Washington has been able to take advantage of teams' weaknesses. I mean, I know they've only won 2 games, but both times they've done it. So I think they're going to do it again. I don't think it's going to be close this time. I think Washington wins 24-10.
Wow. Going to keep Giants down to 10 points, huh?
Number 1 passing defense in the league, Noel.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I hope. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Hey, States started out as blowouts and became close, so you never know what could happen these days.
You never know. All right, so we're going to go next to the Athletics' Ben Standig. He's standing by, if you will. So let's go to him. All right, so let's bring in Ben Standig from The Athletic. You can also follow Ben at Ben Standig on Twitter. And also, Ben is back doing podcasts. His great return there, because I know you were doing it before. And it's called Standig Room Only. That's Standig, like his last name. You've had some huge guests on there already, Ben. What, Jason Wright, Chris Long, Kevin Sheehan, Julie Donaldson you had on the last one. How's it going over there?
Well, first, thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
it's going. I really do like the podcast. Talking's more fun than writing. I was thinking about this earlier. Like, one of the issues with writing is it's very isolating. You're doing it by yourself, and you're in your own head, and that's a dangerous place for me to be in a lot. But when you're talking, obviously, unless you're talking to yourself, which also happens in these parts, you're sharing, you're talking with another person, and that's just a fun exchange, especially, in this day and age, at least for me, where I'm not seeing that many people and talking to that many people. So I'm enjoying it as much from that end. And obviously, trying to talk to the people that I find interesting, and then hopefully, obviously, that translates to the people that are listening.
It's a great podcast, it really is, and I find it very entertaining. Noel just listened to the last one.
Little too good. You're trying to push us out, man.
Yeah, especially you're not just doing Washington football team stuff. You're doing Wizards, and I know you said you're going to do some Caps and stuff like that. So thanks for taking our model. We appreciate that.
Well. I guess, I've covered a lot of sports in town, and look, the beat I'm on is the Washington football team, but there's a lot of those podcasts around, and if I just did that, then it just feels like, well, I'm the same as everybody else. So let me try to do something at least a little bit different and use the, the assets I have, and that includes, knowing people in different sports. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, it's great. So we're big fans, but you came on a little bit late because you were waiting for the players. Any breaking news that we should know about? You want to drop on the old Beltway Sports Roast podcast here?
No, it was Chase Young he had meetings. We had most everybody else around like 1:45, 2:30, somewhere in that range. He had to wait, and obviously, you got to talk to him. Most notable thing, I guess, he was asked. I don't know. I forget what the question was, but basically, he said that his mother graded his first half of the season here and gave him a C+. And when asked why that seemed a little low, what's up with that? He's like, well, I'm not leading the league in sacks. So there you go.
That's fair.
So mom is rough.
Hey, man, you got to give those expectations. Kick that carrot out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So wanted to talk about the Washington game. Obviously, they're playing the Giants on Sunday. Giants surprisingly looked pretty good against the Bucs on Monday. Should we be concerned about this? Do you think that the Giants have a real shot? I mean, obviously anybody does against this team, against Washington, but is there something we should be concerned about going into this? Have they figured it out?
Well, I think there's a difference between competing and winning. I think we're seeing that with this team here. I mean, for the most part this season, Washington has been competitive. They just haven't been able to pull off wins or in some cases, stay just close enough to even have a chance in the end. I think the Giants have been the same way. I mean, I know their record stinks. Obviously, so does Washington's. I don't always just look at the record. I try to look and see like what, how teams are performing. It's sort of like with Daniel Jones. I know people sort of just want to crap on him, and he does commit too many turnovers. But when I watch him play, I see positives. I see a guy who's a gamer, and we saw that at the end of that Tampa Bay game where he drove them down the field for effectively the game-tying touchdown. They needed the 2-point conversion, didn't get it, and maybe there was a pass interference at the call that they got unlucky. It kind of reminded me of what Kyle Allen did in the game at New York after he had a bad turnover that gave the Giants 6 points, drove Washington right down the field. Obviously, for the game-tying touchdown, we know what happened there, that why it wasn't. But, I mean, look, I think the Giants are – if I say they're playing well, I don't mean they're a playoff team, but they look like the type of team that you have to show up to play to get it done, and that's give them credit for that. I think Washington has been that type of team as well. So this is definitely not there's no team Washington should be like some they're definitely going to win this game type situation.
Offensively, what does Washington need to do better in this game versus they did the first one? I mean, defensively, Washington seemed in control of the game, at the very least the second half of the first Giants game. But offensively, what does Washington need to do to produce more points and keep the defense off the field?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't have the stats in front of me, but their run game wasn't that exciting in that Giants game. They were obviously significantly better against Dallas. Going into the Dallas game, Washington was dead last in the league in yards per carry. I think they're now like 28th or something like that. So look, more consistency there will help a lot. That goes for almost any team, but I think especially one where you have a quarterback in Kyle Allen who can do some good things, but if you rely on him too heavily, I think that's where bad things will happen. So, Washington, if you rank their playmakers, I would say Terry McLaurin 1, then Antonio Gibson, then J.D. McKissick. And based on that, you've got to figure out ways to get the ball in their hands. The easiest way is handoffs, running, and I think if they can do that, do it effectively. Both of those guys are averaging over 4 yards a carry. If you can do that consistently, then I think you have a long way to that can go a long way towards helping you to get a win. And no turnovers. That kind of goes without saying. I think between the two quarterbacks in this game, whichever one turns the ball over less might be the guy that gets the W.
Well, I think at least the Dallas game, they showed the ability to run. I mean, anybody can run against Dallas, but that at least might persuade them to have that identity going forward with at least attempting to run the ball. I don't think they're going to run the ball as successfully against the Giants, obviously, because their D-line is pretty solid, and I don't know if they'll have that kind of success, but I think making that attempt is very important. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The Antonio Gibson thing is so fascinating. I mean, on the one hand, he's obviously a tremendous, interesting playmaker with so much ability, but he's still learning how to play the running back position. And J.D. McKissick is more of a Chris Thompson back. You're not looking at him as a go-to, first and 10 between the tackles. I guess that's why they kind of use Peyton Barber. I mean, to me, it's less Peyton the better based on what we've seen so far.
Right.
This is not much is happening there. I think they try to use him. This is his last two games. They went really running back heavy the first series of the game, and I think they're trying to have Peyton go up the middle to let the defense know, hey, we're gonna come up here when we can and try to soften them up. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's doing much. But I think that's in part because Gibson isn't really that kind of a guy just yet. And I think if they can get a lead. I was telling somebody else earlier, I think Gibson is sort of like a momentum player. If you can get a lead and start to dictate to the other team what you want to do, getting him in space and finding creative ways to have him get the ball will go a long way. If you're behind and you have to start, the defense kind of knows what you're going to do. I think it becomes more of a J.D. McKissick show because Gibson is still a bit limited in certain ways as he's learning the position. So, getting a lead would help. But, again, just figuring out ways to get those two running backs the ball, plus McLaurin and I guess Logan Thomas, that's what they need to do. Those are the four guys who seem to be able to make some plays. And, look, if Steven Sims comes back, that's another story. We're not there yet. But, at least some signs of progress during practice this week.
My concern is that Turner, if it's not working at the very beginning, it's easy for anybody to say, oh, I'm going to run against the Cowboys because it's working. When it's not working, he seems to, abandon it immediately and lean on the guys that, like, for instance, Haskins, who obviously needed that run support, and I believe Kyle Allen does as well. I mean, do you think that him seeing what he did with Dallas, there's a possibility that he's learned something? I know he's a young coordinator, but possibly, sticking with something that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be successful at it early on. But, we've seen over the years in football, you stick with the run game, eventually, you'll start to break that defensive line or front seven. Is there any chance that he's learned something from this, from watching what happened in the Cowboys game and how successful they can be doing it?
Look, obviously, he's, still learning his team, his players. We talked of course, about, no off-season workouts, no effect, very limited training camp. That affects not just the players, but obviously the coordinators as well, especially a guy who is new to this team. And, he's only had a handful of games calling plays before this. Also, look, the offense, we knew this team had a lot of questions on offense going into the year. The left side of the offensive line has been all over the place. They've been trailing by double digits most of the games in the first half, most of the games this season. So, when you do that, it becomes harder to run the ball. And sure, there's a reason to say, hey, you got to keep going. But again, they were also last in the league in yards per carry before the Dallas game. They're still pretty bad. So, there's always room for improvement. And I just, like I said, I just also don't think Antonio Gibson has shown that he's like a guy that you're just going to say, here, sort of take the ball and run. But, he's making progress. We talked to Gibson today on Thursday. He said he's feeling much more comfortable. I believe he said the Giants game was maybe the first time he really started getting a better feel for, running lanes, where he needs to go, what he's looking for. And then obviously it translated into even a huge game against Dallas. So, his progress going forward will be huge. And will certainly, if he can, show that he can handle a heavy workload and know what he's doing, that'll obviously make it easier for Scott Turner to stay with the run.
Well, how do you anticipate this game going? Do you anticipate them getting pressure on Daniel Jones, which they did well the first game? It's going to be a trenches game, I believe, like it was the first one. Do you anticipate them having success in some areas that they didn't in other games and coming out with a victory?
I'll give you the honest answer. My brain has been occupied this week by all kinds of things. Obviously, there's an election going on, and
is there? Oh yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So that's
day 3.
Yeah. So that's happening. I've just got some other work stuff I've been working on. So the idea of like the Washington Giants game to some degree is like sort of secondary for me.
Backseated. Yeah, I understand.
I'm right there with you. I swear. I was like, it's already Thursday. What the hell am I doing? I was like,
right. And also it's like weird because Washington didn't play a game last week, so it wasn't like I'm not just
out of sight, out of mind. Yeah,
a little bit. Just trying to work on other things, and So look, obviously, I sort of like I said before, I think whichever quarterback commits the fewest turnovers, I think that team probably is going to be heavily favored to win, or not heavily favored, but it's going to give them a much better opportunity to win this game because those quarterbacks have been coughing it up. Again, I think the Giants look pretty good. I watched some of that Tampa Bay game, and they look. You take. I don't know if Tampa Bay would be considered the favorite in the NFC, but they're certainly one of them, and the Giants, were right there with them in the end. So, I think Washington is going to have to step up. I think. It's also hard because that Dallas game was just such an aberration. Dallas is such a train wreck on defense, and then the DiNucci of the world comes in, and that's just it was like watching the Rams game where Washington couldn't move anything, but on the other side of the ball, it was just like, okay, well, I don't even know what I'm watching here. This isn't a real thing. So it's been basically since that Giants game that they had a game against a fair opponent, I guess. Which again, kudos to them for blowing Dallas out. I mean, that's what you need to do if you're the superior team they were that day. But like I said, if they can limit turnovers, and look, the defensive line, does what they do. This is the first game without Landon Collins. We'll see. Cameron Curl's getting back there. I imagine the Giants are going to think to themselves, "Whoa, this is a 7th round rookie. This is somebody we want to go after." How does Washington prevent that? They do so in part by getting after Daniel Jones and putting him in bad positions so he can't just pick on anybody he wants. And also, hopefully, you force some turnovers out of him.
Well, changing gears a little bit since we're on the election bye hangover, what do you think about Rivera's strategy moving forward for the second half of the season? Is he making that playoff push? Is he looking at guys for next season? Because from my standpoint, if you're looking at the Kerrigan trade, he didn't make that to get a potential draft pick. Kerrigan's going to be gone next year, so he didn't get anything out of that deal. He didn't get a safety where he had the potential opportunity to get Eric Reed for that playoff push for a now situation. What's his strategy? Is he looking to the future? Is he looking to now? He's using a stopgap to, in my opinion, quarterback. What's he doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think he's trying to walk the line of he wants to see what he has on this team, particularly with the young players. He made that when he talked about the Eric Reed situation the other day, that he said, "Hey, we asked Eric Reed to come in. I wanted to get a look at him on the practice squad just to see kind of where he's at. But simultaneously, I want to see what Cameron Curl can do and Jeremy Reeves can do. These are young guys that, he hasn't said that they're the starters in my sort of senses. I don't know if they even view Cameron Curl as a guy who could be the long-term starter, but they want to see what they can do. Yes, he is also talking about winning the division, but I think if you can go out and get a player who's under contract for more than just this year, to my opinion, and Rivera has said this himself, that's something you consider. But for a rental, this team is in no position to trade any pick away to get some immediate help for 9 games. I don't think that if they were 5-2 instead of 2-5, maybe we have a different conversation. But that's not where things are at. So he's trying to walk that line between being helpful for this season, but also not in any way, shape, or form taking away from their future. So, look, we'll see what happens. I mean, as I said before, it wouldn't shock me if the Giants look at Curl and think, okay, what can we take advantage of here with the guy who is, going to be relatively new to this position. And Washington still has issues at a receiver beyond McLaurin. There's definitely things they could use, but I'm okay with the approach they went with. As far as like the Kerrigan thing goes, I think that's sort of a 50-50 call. I get why you don't want to just send him off. I think my bigger issue is that from what I was told, that they just basically told teams don't even bother. And I think that was even beyond Ron Rivera. So, that to me is a bit of a mistake. You should look at explore anybody who's not going to be on this team next year. To me, should have been considered for a trade. Now, there weren't a ton of guys that other people wanted. That's a different story. But like the idea, and I believe the teams were interested in Kerrigan. That doesn't. They just maybe didn't call to officially offer a trade because, if the girl says, "Hey, I'm washing my hair for the next week," maybe you don't call her and see if she wants to go to the movies.
Right.
So
yeah.
I just feel like
Noel can totally relate to that.
I just feel like it's mixed signals. It's either you are or you aren't. And I understand, like you said, walking that fine line, but you have a stopgap quarterback like Kyle Allen. For example, the Miami Dolphins, they put Tua in when Fitzpatrick was playing well because they needed to know what they had. And in some positions, they're playing guys to be competitive. And in other positions, they're playing guys to see what they have moving forward. So it's just, for me, it's just kind of really a big mixed signal there, and I'm not sure what the strategy is. So that was just my take on it.
This isn't pushback. I'm just trying to think, who are the guys that you think are playing to be competitive now as opposed to the other? I'm just trying to
competitive now versus the other. Well, for example, the Kerrigan situation, there was no money in keeping him at this point. They could have gotten, let's say they got a 4th round draft pick for him, for example, or a 5th round draft pick. If you're looking towards the future there, the Kyle Allen situation, he's a stopgap guy. There's no money in it. Haskins, for example, in comparison to the Tua situation, could have potentially been playing to see what you have and to see if you have to go out and draft another quarterback versus putting in a stopgap guy.
On top of that, the Eric Reid situation, I don't see how it's different than, for instance, having Cameron Curl play. You don't know what he's going to do. He's played a very small percentage of the snaps, and you want to see what he can do. But at the same time, it's a double standard. Now actually we want to play Kyle Allen because of that. And I don't really understand the reasoning behind it. Like, why not bring Eric Reid in? Maybe he doesn't have to start, but at the very least, and I know they tried to, but he didn't like the practice squad term or whatever the case may be. But I feel like there are a lot of double standards when it comes to this team. When it comes to the quarterback, he doesn't have enough experience. He can't play, but yet he's playing all these other guys who are inexperienced that we could have had other guys that were veterans come in. Eric Reid, for example. So I find that kind of strange, but that's just me.
So it's an interesting situation, right? These guys, meaning people like Ron Rivera, these coaches, part of their job is they have to answer questions. He doesn't necessarily want to answer questions. I mean, Ron is definitely media friendly, but I'm just meaning he has to, right? So we ask questions like, well, why aren't you playing Dwayne Haskins? He has to say something. Is he gonna say something that's hopeful, that he can something that's he hopes the player can take from it, and maybe he doesn't crush the player, or does he tell you the honest truth? Now, I'm not saying that his honest truth is Dwayne Haskins is terrible and I don't want him here, but simultaneous, look at the actions. He gave an interview with Rich Eisen Tuesday. I wrote about this on The Athletic along with some other things this week about kind of what we've learned through 7 games. And one question was something like, what's your level of belief in Dwayne Haskins right now? The logical, you would imagine some sort of coach speech like, hey, I said when we benched him, we still believe in Dwayne. We want to, see what he can do. But right now we wanted to, go with a guy who had more experience. He did say some of that. He also said, well, my level of belief in his is probably around a 70.
Right.
He gave a specific answer. And then he also said that I had him running with the ones for 11 weeks. He's making this clear to the people who just keep saying, why are you doing only after 4 games? He's like, well, no, he was also there for training camp. And I think the difference between Haskins and other players, I don't think it's a double standard because he's viewing it from a point of view of, is this player, I'm not talking about better or worse, is this player trying? Is this player doing what I need them to do? Does he understand what it takes to get this job done? There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be up and downs. But, do we see reason that we want to keep moving forward? And they've decided at this point, and likely I would imagine going forward, that Dwayne Haskins is not somebody that they view as that they need to be part of or I shouldn't say need to be part of, that they don't view him as somebody who is doing everything maybe necessary to get the job done, that there's a lot of concern with there. And it's obviously a very important position. And also, going from Eric Reed to Cam Curl, just as an example, doesn't really, whatever Eric Reed is or isn't, doesn't really completely change the dynamic of the whole defense. The quarterback obviously changes everything. And after the last 2 games, it seems pretty obvious to me that their offense is substantially better with Kyle Allen in there. Stopgap or not, you also need to see what everybody else can do. And if he can put everybody else in a better position to succeed, that's a win for this offense, for Scott Turner, for Ron Rivera, the players. And I think that's part of it. So I don't think it's I don't think it's a double standard in that sense. And by the way, the Eric Reed thing, I think this is in my opinion, from the outside, I think it's an Eric Reed ego thing. A lot of veteran guys are doing the practice squad because it's very different this year than normal. You can't just bring a guy in for a workout the way you did back in last year. They're basically saying, look, come in, we'll just see what shape you're in. If you're in good shape, likely you'll probably go play. But he didn't want to do it, and I think it's they also have confidence in Curl and Reeves and Everett to see what those guys can do.
Well, one thing I did want to say is that Rivera did say Haskins was going to get opportunities. I'm just wondering if it'll most likely not be with Washington, maybe the XFL.
well, there's another Ohio State quarterback in D.C., right?
Right. I mean, I will say that, I'm not necessarily somebody going that Dwayne Haskins was hosed and should be playing, but at the same time, I don't get why you would necessarily have Alex Smith as the backup going forward. Now, look, if Washington is in a position to really be competing for the playoffs, then maybe there's some logic in having a veteran like Alex Smith again. He's a whole other story about where he's at. But at some point, logically, if things just whatever, they're kind of sputtering, it seems like having Dwayne at least even be the backup has merit if you actually believe that he is part of your future. I don't necessarily know if I believe that they believe that.
No. Agreed. Well, thank you, Ben, so much for coming on and went over, of course. I tried not to. It's all Noel's fault.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I told you.
I did the wrap up. I did the wrap up like 20 minutes.
Ben. I told you small doses.
He's like, yeah, they'll be even smaller now. But remember to follow Ben at Ben Standig on Twitter. Read his coverage on the Washington football team at theathletic.com. Also check out his podcast, Standing Room Only, on all major podcast platforms. Anything else? Am I missing anything, Ben? You're all over the place,
I am. I'm running out of coffee, and I feel like I need a lot this week. I'm not sleeping a lot, so send if you got any coffee out there, or tell me where to get some. I'm like on a kind of over Starbucks right now, so if you got a recommendation, tell me where to go.
I'll see what I can do. All right, got a nice Keurig machine over here.
Yeah.
Like for that election, man, I went to sleep at 3 a.m. on Tuesday night, woke up at 7. Just nightmares all night about it. I was like, I haven't gotten much sleep either, but that's par for the course of my life.
I have a Keurig machine too, but it's not a lot. It's not the same size I'd be getting if I went to Starbucks or 7-Eleven. I'm not talking about even a Venti, just like a medium. So that's my
Put in two.
Yeah, but that's like extra work. I mean,
I need that jug, automatic jug. Boom, and then I can hit it. I don't have
Noel's
time to be nickel and dime. I'm an espresso guy. Yeah. I use the old school the metal container thing you put on top of the stove. So you don't want to talk to me about modern stuff.
Nice.
All right, Ben. Well, go ahead and do your thing. Thanks again for everything, and we will talk down the road, okay?
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We're on all major podcast platforms. Please rate, review, and subscribe. If you like this show, please share it on social media. Again, please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and the Facebook group, and also the website at beltwaysportsbros.com. Hope you guys enjoy the game, and we will see you on Tuesday, not Monday. See you then.